You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. Really excited to have our guest on the podcast that we should have had one of the first episodes, a friend of mine, Matt Russell. He is the industry veteran in software, and with over 2 decades in the animal health industry, Matt Russell has spearheaded startups and collaborated with leading companies. In 2001, he initiated Mast Technology, focusing on integrated radiology solutions. Later, as the co-founder of Odyssey Software, he developed the Diagnostic Imaging Assistant. And he then served as Director of Technology Group at Patterson Veterinary until 2014, following their acquisition of Odyssey. In 2015, Matt co-founded our VetLink and DataPoint. These startups were acquired by IDEX. Matt is currently working on a new venture, Petszel, a groundbreaking pet vet platform that enables integration between the shelters and veterinary practices to ensure adopters are well prepared for their pet care journey. Matt, thank you for finding the time. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you both, Ivan and Shawn. And I think it's great to join. Look forward to this. And it's just been great being friends and colleagues over the years.
So, Petszel, what are you up to? What is it going to be? What's the big vision?
Yeah, so we began building Petszel early last year. And, the initial aspirations, I think, were probably a little too grand in solving, the pet vet, the full pet vet engagement problems and being able to generate a year-round dialogue between veterinarians and the pet parents they serve. I think Petszel will be a meaningful part of what will ultimately be a much bigger solution and take partnerships and integrations. But as we dug into that issue, one key pillar of differentiation, one thing we know we need to look at is establishing relationships with pet parents earlier, like pre-vet care. And to do that, you've got to get to the point of pet acquisition. And so we spent a lot of time with leading shelter directors, some of the largest, most progressive, highest volume shelters in the country to learn about the adoption process, what they liked, what they didn't like, opportunities to create digital experiences and generate relationships with pet parents, and then have that opportunity to connect them to both vet services and other pet care services.
So, Matt, really, really interesting. The whole adoption process, as far as I know it, is very paper heavy still. We've seen a lot of digitization inside of, small animal. It's starting to spill over into equine, but, the start of the pet parent journey kind of starts a lot of times for people at shelters. What did you find when you dug in there, and what's the innovation that you're bringing to this segment of the pet owner journey?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Today, post-adoption, shelters are doing one of a couple things. They are sending out an adoption packet that is typically stuffed with important, information, their adoption contract, medical record, behavioral summary, a slew of different educational information partners that they have to promote. So it ends up being this thick packet, and where do certain things fall? And more often than not, they fall right between the seats of the car, actually. They don't make it to the first vet visit. And it's just this waterfall of information day one when they don't need, right? The adopters don't always need all that information. Some of it they need, after the first week, after the first month, and so on. And so, or it's going out as an email with lots of attachments, not easily searched, not easily retrieved. And all of that is complemented by an adoption counselor's narrative. But even that, the shelters are, more so than ever, perhaps inundated with their populations, and they don't have a lot of time during the adoption process. And so this all just kind of begged for, digitization and the digital experience that today's pet parents, Gen Z is your fastest growing pet parent population. Millennials are your now most populated. They expect everything at their fingertips. And so we've established relationships with leading shelter management systems. There's 4 that are, you kind of make up 93% of that space. And we highly value those relationships with the shelter software, and we're integrating near real time to be able to have a view of adopter data, the data on the pets that they've adopted, be able to capture a medical record summary and in many cases a behavioral summary, and then welcome the pet parent into a digital journey that is entirely branded to the shelter, so coming from a trusted, reliable source. The platform's free to shelters, so it's really easy for them to get on board. And then we deliver that experience and deliver relevant content and other information features at the moments that matter post adoption. And as we dug in with shelters, like one of the things I learned about was the framework that they call Rule of Three. It's pretty simple. It's like day 3, week 3, month 3. And those are some key milestones on expectations you should have on your dog or cat getting acclimated to their new home. Here's what should happen day 3, week 3, 3 months. And we're following that sort of framework and guidance to make sure that pet parents have what they need when they need it.
So that's interesting. That's actually a very known paper heavy process that you're optimizing. I've looked at that several times in different startups, and I think that there were a couple attempts actually in the industry, I think, to solve for that. But I think the attempts that were made were too grandiose, and they also looked at it as a sidebar or car, but not really a focus. So that's really great to see that is addressed. What is the business model behind it? How does that work as an ecosystem for you, for the company? Who's the payer? Just to kind of dig in a little bit of that, because a lot of listeners like to understand how the different models work in the vet industry. If that's not a trade secret,
it's not. And you're right that there have been prior attempts, pretty lo-fi attempts, unintegrated attempts. But if you think about it, a number of companies and services have wanted to partner more closely, activate this channel in a more integrated way. But it hasn't been done quite like we're doing with Petszel. So it's like, okay, if it's free for shelters, if it's free for pet parents, how are we going to make money, right? And so if we can deliver that experience within moments post adoption, right, there are a number of partners that are already well aligned, right, with shelters that want to be in front of that pet parent, delivering really important stuff to get them off on the right foot, right? And because the more you can do that, the less likely that dog or cat will get returned, right? Which is huge. Of all the dogs, for example, that are returned post adoption, 60% of those returns are due to behavior. So, like, what if you can deliver the right tailored, training resource, both physical and digital training resources, and if you can do that, right, that can be monetized. We we have a share in that transaction, or that next bag of food that pet parent gets for diet continuity. Shelters are very much invested in making sure that pets ideally stay on the same diet for consistency. It's really important in general, but post-adoption, when they're coming from a stressful environment and now going into a new home, and if you switch up the diet, right, you have a higher chance of GI issues. And now if you've got a dog who, right, is having issues around the house and dirtying the carpet, more likely that it's going to get returned, right? So if we can put those right partnerships and product service in front of pet parents, right, we participate in those transactions. But very importantly, the shelters do as well, right? The shelters, they want to ethically influence key products and services. And so that is a key area of our model. If we, which we do, know where that adopter resides, we can put a 5-mile radius around their neighborhood and serve up veterinarians, serve up other pet care services that can also be controlled by shelters, like shelter preferred sites. And if we're doing that and we're generating e-bookings, or we're generating, that pet sitter booking, et cetera, that's right. That's a key revenue source for us as well. And then there's other ongoing partnerships, with both independents and, veterinary corporate groups to deliver better prepared, well-qualified new client leads. So those are some of the key areas that Petszel is focused on. And, if we're delivering to the shelters something that saves them time, helps them now deliver a consistent post-adoption experience, and ultimately reduces likelihood of return, it's really easy for them to say yes. And on top of that, they have new funding potential. So that's right. That's where it all kind of starts, and then it feeds into ultimately what Petzel's model and how that's evolving.
That makes a ton of sense, Matt. I want to go in a completely different direction. Hope you don't mind.
Sure.
But you've been around doing this for a long time. A lot of people that listen to our show are out there hunting and scratching their first time, trying to break into the market, trying to help, whether that's the veterinarian or the pet parent. So a couple questions. One, I want to check an assumption. Did you start as a developer? Don't answer yet. So I want you to answer that question. And then two, I want you to maybe help our audience learn through your experience from, startup founder to corporate guy to acquisitions guy to startup founder again. And then maybe to top it all off, what are you doing with another startup?
Yeah, crazy, huh? No, I'm not a developer. I just know enough, kind of like you and Ivan. I know enough to be dangerous, and I know enough to, cry BS when a developer is saying we can't do something. But that's the extent. I'm not a developer. My background is kind of weird and mixed. My academic background is animal science. I started my professional career actually in the zoo field as a herpetologist. I used to chase reptiles and amphibians all over the world. A lot of fun, no money. And so as I was wrapping up school, I got into animal health and helping to manage some practices in the DFW area, and then just started to recognize workflow challenges and pain points in veterinary, practices. Again, much like Talkatoo and much like things like SmartFlow, right? Solve key pain points in the veterinary workflow. And so, yeah, like Ivan summarized earlier, that started this very much unexpected, unplanned entrepreneurial journey. And for startups that, again, I never would have expected to become a serial entrepreneur and have exited multiple companies and had the privilege of working for some really cool large corporations on the other side, which is a very different learning. And so I will say that one of the common denominators is always partnering with, and you guys know this, partnering with great developers, getting your CTO as your partner, right, and giving them some meaningful equity, and I did that all for all four of them. Some things over this journey have gotten easier in that I think all three of us, it's not that hard for doors to open now in the industry. How wide they open, that varies, but they open, which is tougher for a new entrant. It's still, though, we could spend a whole episode talking about startup challenges and how, big companies should be in a different place in enabling innovation and enabling more advanced capabilities, whether that's, integration bidirectionally with PIMS or diagnostic systems or other modalities and whatnot. We're not nearly far enough along, and it's the pace of great startups and innovation. It's outpacing this market's ability to enable the innovation, which it'll come, it'll materialize. But I think that's that's painful for all of us, whether we've been at this for years. And sure, we may know the path to get there faster, but we need to do better in those areas. That's a whole separate topic. So, Shawn, hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, you just missed the last one. What the hell are you doing with another startup?
Yeah, I've always kind of had this idea in mind to connect siloed areas of the ecosystem. There's little similarities to what we did with our VetLink, right? We made some big steps forward, still plenty of opportunities and work to do to better connect primary and specialty care and round trip that referral process. But that's what I looked at this and said, here's one area where okay, pets are being acquired here. They got to make it over here to veterinary and pet care services. And there's absolutely no meaningful bridge between those two spots. And, like you guys, I'm dyed in the wool animal health, tech. I'll just always, people ask why are you doing a fifth? And what'll happen after this one? You'll still see me at VMX. You'll still, see me on a podcast. I love this stuff. And so I'll always do it. There's just a passion. And I think it's, a problem that needs to be solved.
It's a great answer.
Yeah. And that's the question, Shawn, that my wife asks me a lot.
I know she's asked me that about you, Ivan.
His wife has asked you that. Yeah.
No, what's he doing with another startup?
Yeah. We're all crazy, of course.
Yeah.
I think you might be right.
A bit of an addiction, the entrepreneurship. So, Matt, big picture, when you build it's successful and sold it to the next big giant company, or right before that, what does it look like? What does Petszel, who is talking about it, cannot live without it? What is that big vision for it, and what does it look like in 5 years?
Yeah, great question. in 5 years, we look at our 5-year plan, right? We want to have a meaningful presence and be delivering even more value than we are now to the animal welfare ecosystem. And if we're doing that, right, we've grown to some critical mass. That means that right, pet parents are using it, they're relying on it. It has become a significant valued tool for pet parents in the early parts of their journey. And if we've done that, there's plenty of opportunity in the first 3 to 6 months of pet parenthood. If this is the platform that pet parents use to start, whether it's their first time dog or cat care journey or their repeat right dog or cat parents, we'll be pretty proud of what we achieved. And we see people have asked me okay, well, how does this conflict or overlap with, you've got all sorts of pet apps, and we actually see and are in I think really exciting discussions with some of those key players, because we see a great handoff opportunity. So if this is what's feeding into creating more vet visits and pet parents recognizing the quality of vet care and other pet care services, I think we've been successful.
And I'm not on your leadership team, but I think I don't even have anything to do with your company, but I think if you could relieve some of the burden off the shelters by that revenue share model, that's going to be a pretty significant accomplishment as well.
Yeah, and we we are spending some very thoughtful quality time in the animal welfare community. It's really important. We obviously are for-profit business. We need to make money, but we can do that and deliver tremendous value to animal welfare organizations. And I'm excited when I look at the leadership team. We've got some great co-founding talent, but we've got a really powerful advisory board made up of folks from the vet side, but very importantly, some animal welfare leaders who have led some of the largest shelters, who are highly influential, and are making sure that we deliver the experience that shelters and, of course, then ultimately their adopters want.
That's awesome, Matt. Well, it's exciting to watch. We'll watch from the sidelines and probably talk to you again in a little bit. Thanks so much for taking the time. We like to wrap up the same way every episode. Got a couple questions for you. First is a YouTube video, a TED Talk, a book, something that you found interesting and inspiring that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm sadly overdue to read my next good book, but I'll tell you one thing that I've spent a lot of time here lately, just because I don't understand it well and want to get more comfortable and figure out how do we leverage AI without being buzzy, without just trying to stuff AI and having that on a pitch deck or something. So I've spent a lot of time reading up on material, understanding what opportunities there are. I listened to a recent Wall Street Journal podcast with Sam Altman and Mira Murati, who, OpenAI and ChatGPT, and just listening to how that's evolving and what, the next level of personalization and data delivery that we're going to be able to, all of us in our products, be able to optimize, experiences for veterinarians, for the pet parents they serve, for animal welfare, et cetera. So long-winded answer, but that's a podcast that, I found pretty valuable. It was just within the last few months.
Awesome. And the last question that we ask, is there another innovator that you want to recommend to this podcast?
Yeah. I think spending more time understanding the animal welfare side and the connections that can be made. One individual we're working really closely with, and I'd certainly recommend for the podcast, her name is Kristen Hassan. Kristen led some of the largest, highest volume animal shelters in the country. She's on several animal welfare boards, and she now has her own consulting firm called Outcome Advisors, and she's fantastic, and she really has a lot of great progressive ideas on how shelters can work with other vet and pet care providers to, hopefully generate the most positive outcomes and pets find their forever homes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.